Hey everyone, back with a new topic today, and our topic for discussion today is discernment. This has been something that has been super present for me recently, and I think for the collective in general, because we're really shifting into a new paradigm where I really believe the vision that I see is that the people are very much more in their power. And to be in your true personal power, you have to be able to receive the wisdom and understanding of God or the higher forces or whatever you believe in as sort of the highest vibrational energy of the universe that steers and directs us on our path. When I think of God, that's exactly how I consider God. I don't really necessarily think of God as like a man in the sky with like a naughty or nice list. I think of God as like the highest vibrational possibility that exists, that's always guiding us into our highest vibrational possibility for our lives and therefore the collective. And that there is this information, these clues, these synchronicities and alignment that's always present. There's a guiding force that is always present in every single moment, in every choice that we make. And it is up to us and our discernment to listen to that guiding force, to follow its lead against even what makes sense in the moment or what might otherwise be logical or whatever other kind of forces are at play when you make your own decisions, to prioritize that voice within that knows somehow more than what the mind knows more than what the context knows. There is a higher understanding that is present in every single moment and in all that we do. And so discernment says, I'm going to lean into that higher understanding despite anything else. It's not easy to do. I think this is why discernment is a tool that you sharpen and wherein it's a practice that you learn and facilitate over time, because it kind of goes against societal programming, because societal programming would say to kind of like sit down and lay out all of your options and, be logical about it and rational and realistic, and then figure out which option is best. And that's one way to do it, and sometimes the highest option aligns with what happens in that process. But the truth is, it doesn't always. And that's not the way to land and sharpen your discernment, is not to use logic. In fact, it's sometimes to actually even sort of abandon logic and let yourself feel into the higher vibrational truth that's always present within and around you. And so this is where discernment comes into play. It's quiet, it's nuanced, it doesn't shout all the time. Most of the time it does not shout, because it tests us to our own ability to use our inner knowingness and inner understanding and willingness to align with what we know versus what we know when a decision is to be made. So I know for me, this year has been a major test in discernment. And I feel as that I'm someone who is highly intuitive. I really, in fact, rely heavily on my intuition. And I make decisions intuitively, even if the sort of plot is not laid out for me, or I don't fully understand why something's happening, or I just know that this is what I'm meant to do. In fact, many of you kind of saw me do that when I left Austin. I could just feel this sort of intuitive tug that I needed to leave Austin, at least for time, and switch it up. And did that, broke my lease. Y'all kind of came with me on that path. The piece I didn't tell you all about, because I'm still kind of processing, and I've been actually quite hard on myself because I really trust my intuition and I didn't listen to it. So many of you knew I was lining myself up to come to Miami, and I did that. And through like a Facebook group, connected with this man who was renting places down here. He had like a 3-month spot that was kind of in the perfect place. It was kind of, the whole setup was perfect for what I wanted. And he wanted everything up front. And I knew right away, there was something in me right away that was like, don't, there was a question mark. And usually for me, if there's a question mark, I don't even question the question marks. It's either a no for me, or I'm going to set it on the burner until it's no longer a question mark. That's my discernment. That's my intuition, knowing that if there's even a question mark here for me intuitively, then I'm going to listen to that, even if it feels like the perfect thing. And in the moment it did feel like the perfect thing, I also was convincing myself that I was sort of investing in my move to Miami. So I put thousands of dollars up front into this place, which I thought was for a 3-month stay and a deposit. And it was a total scam. So I I didn't listen to what I knew. I didn't listen to what I knew. And in fact, even as I was sending payment, it was kind of getting blocked. And I knew it even then and still kind of overrode it because the situation seemed so perfect that I wasn't I wasn't using my discernment. I simply totally had abandoned my intuition that was like, you're not, this was a test that I failed. To be honest, I totally failed the test. And it's been a challenge, because obviously something like that, I've spent my housing budget, and not only do I not have my housing budget, but then I don't have the housing anymore. So now I'm like without both. And so many of you have heard me kind of come on here recently and been going through it somewhat. And that has been a big piece of it. It's also sort of really tainted my experience of Miami, because I found out it was a scam the day before I was to fly out here. And so I'm like, have a flight tomorrow to a place I've hardly been, and I don't even have a place to stay at this point. I don't even, I'm like, it's just kind of was slowly, because I didn't even want to believe it, because I rely so heavily on my intuition. I have for my whole life. I've traveled extensively and by myself primarily. And so I've made many major decisions like this by myself. And I guess it was just, then again, this year in the context of discernment, I think for many of us has been kind of a test. Like, are you still listening? Are you still listening? Are you cocky? Did your ego get in with it? Are you trying to kind of force something to be perfect that's maybe not perfect? And this is where discernment really comes into play. And I simply abandoned my discernment. I totally own that. And it's been a thing. It's been a major thing. It has obviously impacted my being here. It's impacted my life in so many different ways. It's not fun to get thousands and thousands of dollars stolen from you. It's the first time that's ever happened for me. So it's very uncomfortable. I really truly was robbed. And so in giving you this story, which I haven't told you guys yet because I've still been processing it. And like I said, been extremely hard on myself. But at this point, I understand why it happened. And I understand that also in the context of many other pieces that have happened in my life recently, in this year specifically, that have really required and tested my discernment, which is why I'm coming to y'all with the theme of discernment. Because the truth is, in every instance that I've been tested this year, and particularly this one that taught me the hardest lesson, I had the choice to listen. It was there. The answer was clear. I knew the answer within myself, and my mind kicked in and came up with its reasons why, it's okay. Because even if, I had a super solid contract with him. So in my mind, like, it was okay if it was a scam, because I would just take him to court, obviously, and get the money. Little did I know how difficult that was. And he's like a master at this. It's a whole thing, but I'm not the only person he's done this to. This is what he does for a living, ultimately. So it's been a thing, and the thing about it is, as much as I need to not be hard on myself, because I made a mistake and I didn't listen, and it costed me a lot, frankly. It also still, in the most beautiful and magical ways that it does, lined me up with what I need to be doing and what I needed to do, and certain moves I needed to make that happened as a result of that scenario. Because I did fly out to Miami, ended up getting like an Airbnb, which is where I was when I first got here, in an Airbnb that I wasn't, prepared to pay for and what have you. And then once I realized I was still kind of in the mind that like, this can't happen to me. So I was still thinking it was maybe going to somehow get the money back, or maybe he'd figure it out. Cause like, why would someone do that? Like, I just don't, that type of behavior doesn't even compute in my energy. It doesn't exist. It's like not even a possibility to me. And so it took a second for that to settle in. And then I needed just a time to set down and sit for a second. So that was when I went to Seattle. Ended up going home, which was not a part of my plan, but absolutely was what I needed. Oh my gosh. I hadn't been home in 5 years, and it was amazing. It was so good. I stayed at my sister's and got to spend some good quality time with her and just kind of like settle and back in my energy. And because it's like, it really is disturbing and offensive energetically for someone to do that to you. And I had to kind of integrate it and like process it in a safe space. So I did that for some time. Then I came back to Miami. I ended up setting up this other 3-month stay, which happened to also come out of the exact same Facebook group. And I was very sensitive to, and, a lot more high alert about, but this one obviously worked out. And I'm now here for like 2 or 3 more weeks, and then I'm done in Miami and given the context, I do think I'm going to tie up here, which I hate to blame all of this on Miami, but I learned through all of this that Miami is actually the scam capital of the world. Who knew? In fact, one of my close girlfriends, Ugochi, she had been scammed out of like hundreds of thousands of dollars here. And many other people came to me with their stories of having been scammed here. So I don't know what it is about Miami and its scammers, but watch out if you're ever in Miami, that it does exist here, because I know in my mind, literally before this, it was just like, it was never going to happen to me. And B, I just didn't even think people, why? I mean, this man I'm talking on the phone with, he sends me videos of the place. He had gone into the place. Like, he's very, very good at what he does. So he totally got me. And all that to say, I will be leaving in a few weeks. I'm still kind of not even sure what I'm doing next. I probably will just be sort of nomadic through the end of the year. But I'm back into using my discernment. I'm back into not questioning it. I'm back into letting it guide me, even when something seems so perfect. And I feel that excitement of like, this is so perfect. If there's any question mark, as I always normally do move, I'm going to let it sit and I'm going to trust it. I'm going to trust that when it's right, there will be no question mark. So this is discernment, right? Discernment is something that sometimes you do have to go through uncomfortable situations to realize that you knew the whole time, even if your mind wanted to tell you otherwise, or even if you had this excitement and you kind of jumped into something before it was like perfectly polished or perfectly what you wanted. And so discernment says, wait until it's right. Wait until you know with every bone in your body that something is right. Wait until there are no question marks. Wait until, you have that inner absolute hell yes. I know myself and like a lot of my friends are like in this vibe where if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And that's discernment, right? Discernment is going to be like when it's like, you knew before you even knew. That's discernment, right? That full soul level yes. Now, not everything will be that way, right? And we have more minor decisions, like what you have for dinner, right? You might have a soul level yes of like what to have for dinner, but there's discernment in every choice we make. And I think the more we tether to that inner understanding and that higher understanding in little decisions, the more it becomes a little louder in the bigger decisions, because our choices do, they decide a lot of our life. We decide so much of our life with the choices that we make. And what we have to remember is it's not just us in this body and that's it. And that person is making these decisions. We are aligned with, in many ways, the entire collective, but more so the higher energies. And that when we choose the highest option, it is for us, it's for this us and every version of us to come. And also, as you choose up, you vibrate higher and your life experience gets brighter and it feeds everybody. So discernment is a tool that not only attunes you to the higher consciousness, it attunes you to the entire collective. Because when you're making decisions from that high vibrational space and you're living a high vibrational life, you truly do become the medicine for all people. And there is that companionship, that co-creation that happens between you and God in all aspects of life. And whatever you even believe in, it's, to me, a lot of people use the term the universe. And I know for me, I actually, like, for much of my life used God and then went to the universe for a second when I was kind of like deconstructing myself from religion. And now I've come back to God because it's like the whole totality of what I'm trying to describe as God. So I do use the word God, but, switch it so I don't have to change it every 5 minutes to fit everybody's needs here. But there is a higher force. There is a higher force at play, whatever you want to call it. There is a higher force at play, and it absolutely guides us. It absolutely puts this perfect song on in the grocery store that you need in that moment. That happened to me the other day when I was like calling for my mom and I just was having a bad day and I like needed her energy. I walk into the grocery store and her favorite song by Aaron Neville, which is not even a person people know, was playing in the grocery store the second I walked in. And I just literally started crying in the grocery store, but it was like so perfect. It's like the way that life aligns in the most miraculous ways, in the most perfect ways, is always happening. Some seasons it seems like it's a little bit louder, and some seasons it feels like a little bit quieter. And I see that as the louder seasons are sort of the seasons of reward where you're sort of being celebrated. And the quieter seasons are sort of the seasons of mastership, when you're really being asked to sharpen your discernment, to sharpen how you move around the world, even when the signs aren't like alarming you, even when it feels like it's just you, right? Because again, in those seasons of like feeling so supported and like the signs are everywhere and the alignment is rich and loud, it's so easy. It's easy to know what decisions to make. It's easy to feel supported, and it's easy to know that you're not in this thing alone. In the season, it's just yourself, and you're not hearing quite as many of the signs, or, they're not sounding through the speakers of the grocery store. It can be easy to question it. Like, what is this all about? And is this just me here? And why, we kind of spiral in, or maybe me. I definitely have my seasons of questioning, and they're healthy. It's healthy. It's healthy to question yourself. It's healthy to question what you believe in. It's healthy to question what you're listening to, because this is where ego is one thing and God is another thing. Because ego is the mind that says, well, this is perfect, I'm going to do it. Even if I'm questioning it here, my mind thinks this is perfect. This guy seems cool. That's ego. It was ego. It was ego forcing something that wasn't perfect. When it's non-ego, when it's God or divine, it just flows. It just flows so easy. It's like you don't even have to do that much work. That's why hard work and hustle culture and all of that, it works for some people, but for me, don't want to do all of that. I just want to flow, because I know the energy of flow. And I know that while flow might take you, there might be like less happening in the flow, because the flow doesn't need like all this chaos and commotion. It just flows. And there's still hardship in the flow. There's still challenges. It's still bumpy and crazy at times, of course, but it's easier. It's like it's a path of least resistance. You just let go. But it's that discernment is what sort of is like the oar in the ship of the flow, where you're discerning, which way to go, and whether you take the path that gets a little bumpier or the path that's smoother. Because even with my situation, I took the path absolutely that was bumpier by not listening to what I knew. And yet somehow, in some miraculous, amazing way, it still landed me in a very wonderful home space. It still took me home, which I really needed to do and probably wouldn't have even done this year had I not gone then. And there were other like little nuanced things that had to happen as a result of that situation. So it's like you're still in flow, even if you're not perfect. Like as me, here I am being hard on myself for not being perfect with my discernment. But I needed that lesson. I know I needed that lesson, because now I don't question it anymore. And the little opportunities that have come since then to make sure, check my discernment, I haven't even like batted an eye. As soon as there was any question mark, as soon as there was any funniness, any energy that wasn't marking it for me, I just I set it down. And I trust that there will be no funniness when it's right. And there will be no offness or oddity or question marks when it's right. And that doesn't mean it's not ever going to be right. It just means that at least right now it's not right. And if I had listened to that with this, I wouldn't have been in this situation. I would have known at least, okay, I'm going to set this down. If it's right, it'll still be there, in time, or time will, decide what's right and what's not right. So discernment is a major, major tool. And I tweeted the other day that discernment will save your life, and it quite literally will, in the major situations and choices, decisions, it will literally save your life. Choosing to do something versus not doing something, when the doing something might put you in a harmful situation. As a woman who has traveled extensively by myself, I've had to use it a lot to listen to like, oh, this sounds fun. But if there's any like, I'm not even going to mess with it. I don't even do that. I'm not ever going to put myself in a situation where just because my mind thought it sounded fun and there was a little sound of any alarm going off, I can't afford that, right? I can't afford that. It's not worth it to me to I don't have any FOMO at all. I actually have JOMO, which is the joy of missing out. So I don't need to be in the mix. I'm not, whatever. So if there's any little thing, especially, being in a new place by yourself as a woman, you got to listen to it. But in any and all contexts, discernment is always here. It's always, always guiding you. And it comes down to what you have for dinner, because there's probably a higher option, whether you're choosing between McDonald's or, a nice home cooked, loved meal, obviously. But ideally, we make always the higher vibrational choices, but our choices vary in their effect from what you have to dinner to if you go out and you go out in this to put yourself in a situation, there's actually going to be danger, and you knew that there was going to be danger, but you didn't listen to it. Now you're in danger, right? Two different things, but always present. And so we can use everything in our life to sharpen our discernment, to listen to what we know, to set down that over exaggerated excitement or whatever else kind of comes from the egoic space, and know that it'll flow when it's right. It will flow when it's right. It will be seamless. It'll come together perfectly. It's almost like it already existed in the way that you needed it to. You were just sort of lining up with it. That's when you know. That's really when you know. That's when it's in flow. That's when it's alignment. That's when discernment says hell yes, and you go on that route. Until then, wait or ask for what you need. Maybe sometimes discernment says it's not perfect because you're not speaking on what you need in this dynamic or whatever it is. So it's very nuanced. It's very layered. But I wanted to bring out discernment in this because I think it's a really key for all of us who are building the new paradigm. We're going to really need the discernment, that co-creation commitment to build something new. The systems are dying. Even the American empire is crumbling. There is so much happening right now in this timeline of humanity that so much new is being built that we don't even sort of realize we're doing that, because we're just sort of living out like our fun, high vibrational life experience, when in reality that we are the leaders of a new world. When you live out your high vibrational truth, you do lead humanity forward, and we are doing that. So we have to honor that we're doing that alongside a higher vibrational truth. And many of us even feel like we're more kind of in our spiritual power and more in our energetic power than ever right now. And that is because we have chosen the higher timeline. We are building the higher timeline. We are building with and from and for the higher timeline and the new paradigm. But it's not just going to come from us, right? It always comes from moreness. It always comes from the greatest good that moves humanity collectively and together to create a shared vision that we don't even know we have until it starts to formulate in front of us and materialize in front of us from the depths of our spirit and from discernment. So let discernment be a promise that you make to yourself and your life and to the highest vibrational possibility for all people everywhere. And listen to what you know. Listen to what you know. Don't, when the mind wants to kick in and think it knows because logic says and this, and you're excited about it, set it down. Just set it down for a second, double check. And as long as there's an alignment here and here and here, amazing. Do it. If it's a soul level, hell yes, boom, you're in. But if there's any question, especially here, the mind loves to question. So I also have to discern when the mind is questioning or when the heart is questioning. Huge major difference there. The mind is good at questioning. It needs to be able to question, and it helps you sharpen and polish what you know when you question yourself and what you believe. The heart doesn't really question. That's the beautiful part of it. The heart doesn't really question, it knows. And so we have to trust what it knows, because it knows more than the mind. It is more connected to the quantum field, the greatest good, the God, than the mind is. So we have to sometimes quiet the mind and really tune into the heart space, the heart frequency, to know what's right and to follow that discernment. Okay, that's what I got. Don't feel bad for me. I'm all right. I'm going to make it through. I didn't even want to tell you guys, but cat is out of the bag. So just, if nothing else, use my situation to commit to yourself right now, to commit and promise yourself discernment, because you know what's right for you. You know which way to go. You always know. Okay. All right. Love you guys. And I'll see you next time.